What's going on, beautiful people? We've got a great episode for you today. Another awesome guest. I mean, come on, you're not allowed on the show if you're not awesome. So there you have it. So before we get started, we just wanted to raise some awareness for a friend of ours, friend of the show, Izel Molina. Izel is one of the best kids you'll ever meet. He comes from a great family as well. Izel's 8-month-old dog, Titus, has recently been diagnosed with a rare brain condition and only has a few months to live without surgery. The surgery is rare and very expensive, so insurance cannot cover the whole thing. They would love to give Titus a fighting chance at life, so any donation at their GoFundMe page, no matter how big or small, would be greatly appreciated. You can find that at GoFundMe.com. Type in Saving Titus, Titus, or if you Google Saving Titus, Titus, it's the first GoFundMe page that comes up. Plus, we will have a link to the page in the description of this episode, so please check that out if you can. So this guy's an upstate baller, hailing from Casanova, New York. And he's got that Jersey toughness too. He was a Rutgers Lacrosse All-American in 2015, as well as the Big Ten Specialist of the Year. He currently is a professional lacrosse player for the Whip Snakes Lacrosse Club. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Nardella.
Story is Joe Nardella. He's the leading scorer. And here is Nardella. Takes it right to the house. And this one will wind up going to Whip Snakes. It's Nardella going for a run. Joe Nardella has a pair.
He's won every face-off. He has an assist and now a goal.
If he's not the MVP, he's definitely one of the leading candidates, right?
So what's going on, brother? It's really good to see you, man. I know we've exchanged some texts here and there, but it's great to see you, not in person, but to see your face.
Yeah, likewise. And not a whole lot's going on. Just gearing up. Just been training hard.
You in Boston or Casanova right now?
I'm back home in Q's. Just to keep it's like way more low key here, you know.
Oh, absolutely. New York State's doing pretty well with all this.
Yeah, upstate's doing well too. Like
I think well is a relative term too.
No doubt.
Have you ever met Ryan? He came in the year after you graduated.
I don't think so.
All right.
Yeah,
So
we've met a couple
you look,
times.
I feel like you look so familiar.
Taters is another one of my names.
oh, so you've definitely heard the legend of Taters.
Maybe.
I don't know if I have.
Oh, dude, you're missing out.
I'm missing out. Well, I guess I'm gonna learn about it today.
No, we're learning about you today, man. You gotta do that on your own time.
So you guys started this you guys are doing a podcast?
Yeah, man, we're doing a podcast with the Bleav podcast network. It's called Bleav in Rutgers. It's hopefully going to be a Rut hype machine that tells the truth about the awesomeness of Rutgers University and the great people who have gone to Rutgers like yourself and the great people who are there right now.
That's awesome. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
So
man.
we're gonna be talking to you. We talked to Mazone, and we're going to be talking to Jules. It's basically we're doing a PLL preview episode. It's probably going to be airing sometime next week.
Let's start at Rutgers, man. So you didn't exactly have the greatest freshman year. It was kind of tough. You know, you're recruited by Coach Staggs, and then Coach Breck comes in, and it's kind of tough. You know, you're away from home for the first time. But then as a sophomore, you come back and you're a sensation, and you go on to be an All-American by the time you're a senior. When did it click that you could really be something special?
I think it was that sophomore year. Even though we were in a ton of close games. I think we lost 8 1 or 2 goal games during a 2-13 season. And that year, Chris Aline and I had both just kind of kept us in every game because we were winning draws, and Chris was making a ton of saves. And both of us kind of realized, like, damn, we're just as good as like all the best guys in the conference. And at the time, it was the Big East, so we had Syracuse and Notre Dame, right, and Georgetown, St. John's, Providence, Villanova. So it was a pretty competitive league. And that's kind of when it clicked. I really just prepped hard after that freshman year. I think I was around like 52%, which was solid, but I knew I could be much better, especially if I really worked on the technique, because I hadn't been taught until I got there. And so those were things that really just helped push me forward.
Yeah, man. I mean, I remember watching you that year. I think after that year, I had a mutual friend from my town who was on the team, and I was at Syracuse, and he had hooked us up, and we had met up, and I was just coming
Yeah,
off
you came to my house.
yeah, I was a senior. I was coming off my senior year, which I did pretty well, and I felt pretty good about myself. And then you quickly humbled me, making me realize I had a long way to go, and how special you were.
I remember that, Sean, driving up to my house. We were taking face-offs in the grass.
Oh yeah, dude. Yo, you kicked my ass. I was like, oh my god, who is this kid? But that year came with some interesting decisions you would make or wouldn't make. So you and I, teammates in 2015, we know each other pretty well. And then me being at Syracuse, even without talking to you, I had heard the rumors that you were thinking about transferring to Syracuse after that sophomore year. It seemed like a match made in heaven going back home. Rutgers was struggling. I guess what kept you from making that decision? And then with how it is with how colleges are with the transfer portal now, kids are bouncing around more than ever. So what's your message to guys going through adversity like you were, coming off a 2-13 season? Maybe the team wasn't where you wanted it to be.
And it's tough because I've talked to kids who've transferred like yourself and who have loved it, and it's been a great decision. But I think when you kind of nestle in not only to like the team and the brotherhood, but to like the community, like I had a ton of friends not only on the team, but kids I had met in the dorms and classes, and like I legitimately loved Rutgers. And it definitely was a thought. I never even like talked to any coaches or really entertained it. But I know, like, when Coach Brexton got suspended, teams had like pseudo reached out to me through other people. And they're like, what's he thinking? And it hadn't even crossed my mind until then. But obviously, like, I'm a competitor. I wanted to play for the best team possible. And that was certainly not us. So there was thought about it. But I think anyone going through struggle, going through adversity like that, for me, I took it as a challenge to kind of be a leader and try to change the culture. And although, we didn't quite get there. My junior year, we were much better. First year, Rutgers made the playoffs in, I think, 10 years. And we had a really solid team. We made a pretty good run at it, but we lost to Denver, who ended up winning the championship the following year. So they were pretty stacked. But my senior year, when we went to the Big Ten, we kind of took a dip, I think, because the level of competition increased. And we just lost a lot of close games. But that following years where, when you were there and you guys went to the Big Ten finals, like that's when I really saw the change. And that was what made it feel like it was super worth it because, when things suck, when the team's not doing good, and when you have a coach who does have a vision like Coach Breck did, I just wanted to be a part of the change and lead the culture and kind of be the guy at Rutgers. I loved the responsibility of having to show up every game for us to have a chance.
Yeah, make no mistake, you were a huge part of that change. I go back to that Ohio State game in 2015 where you dominated. That game was a huge confidence booster for us the following year in 2016 where we had more wins. And it's like, hey, we can play with these guys. And also, I don't think people realize, things were kind of chaotic in 2015, but we were losing a lot of close games. I mean, we lost a very good Army team, close. Very good Hopkins team that went to the Final Four, close. Maryland beats us in the last 10 seconds.
I think they went to the championship game, right? They lost to Denver.
Yeah, they did lose to Denver.
And so we lost to Princeton, who was good back then, right? We lost them by a goal. We had a ton of close games. There's a couple we definitely want back, like the Monmouth game where we started.
Oh, God, yeah. But here's the thing about the Monmouth game. I feel like we almost needed that to be humbled like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I was in the stands for those games being recruit. And even though you guys were losing, I was still looking at it as hey, this is an opportunity to build something. You guys were in basically every single game. I remember the Maryland game. I was there, the Army game, watching it. But how hard was it to just keep your motivation during those first couple seasons when you guys clearly weren't winning? How do you, as a leader of the team, try to keep the locker room together?
I mean, it's easy to say it was hard, but honestly, it wasn't that hard to stay motivated because we were so close, right? It's I don't remember really getting blown out in any games when we were there. I think, we had a bad game against St. John's. It might have been my sophomore year. When McCardle just absolutely ran it up. They hung 20 on us. And then my senior year, we I think Virginia beat us by like 6 or 7 maybe. And those are really the only 2 games I didn't feel like we were like in. But every other game, it was so close. And like we were a couple plays away from winning. And we were all like, we got to get the next one. So everyone was like stayed pretty hungry. Guys were continuing to do extra work for the most part. You know, Sean, we got some guys who also went the other way. But
Yeah, there were a lot of guys on that team who maybe weren't doing things the way we all would have liked, but you were a guy who worked extremely hard, handled his business, and made a tremendously positive impact on our program.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on that, like obviously we didn't play together. We don't really know each other at all. But I remember your name. I remember going through that locker room, being like, "Hey, I got to work my ass off in order to preserve the legacy of those guys that came before me." And even though you didn't see the success, the years after, when I was there for 4 years, we had so many wins, and it was just awesome to see that.
Right, and that's what it's all about. Paying it forward to you guys.
So back to the transfer stuff. I think in my situation, I would have stuck it out had things aligned for me more lacrosse-wise. That's a story for another day. But in terms of you sticking it out, I think that really speaks to, your loyalty to your teammates, to your university, to your friends, and not just your friends, like you said, on the lacrosse team, but your friends just in everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, if I say I had left Rutgers, there's no guarantee you win a championship at those other places, or even they're recruiting the best kids every year. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe the coach doesn't love your game. Like, nothing's guaranteed, and I think kids always think the grass is greener on the other side because they're going through trouble. But a lot of times it's not. Like, you got to appreciate the little things and the friends that you have, because if you had left later in your career, it's much harder to kind of get acclimated with the kids on the new team and really be a part of that, like those kids who were there when you first start. Like, there's something to be said about the freshmen struggle together, right? And growing up together and learning about each other and learning about college and life, right? And you learn about those things together, and that's what brings the team so close.
That takes some time to develop. Like you see kids like they're shitheads like their freshman year, and then by the time they're senior, they're buttoned up.
Yeah, different people. And at Rutgers, man, like for early mornings, like you guys are standing out there, like waiting for people to pick you up, not knowing if it's going to happen, taking the bus everywhere. Like, dude, it's like a lot of that stuff makes you so much better with time management, getting up early and just being on top of things. And when you do mess up, you feel like it's the end of the world because you let everybody down.
Do you think that
Absolutely.
you would have regretted if you transferred from Rutgers?
It's tough to say, right?
Yeah,
Could have transferred, and I think about it because Syracuse lost that championship game my junior year to Duke.
Yep.
Like, they got smoked on faceoffs. And I love Rutgers more than anything. I grew up loving Syracuse, so that would have been like the only spot I really would have wanted to go. Syracuse or Cornell being an upstate guy.
Yeah, no, it's a really tough thing to even think about. But I mean, it all works out at the end. I mean, you've been successful in everything that you've done since then, so I think it's turned out pretty well.
So your pro lacrosse development, obviously, so you get drafted by the Cannons in 2015 before the season, when the draft was before the season, and you had a pretty solid rookie year, and then seeing you grow every year, it seems like your technique gets better every single year. What has changed most throughout your professional lacrosse career?
I think how I practice and how I train and how I manage everything. When you're in college, it's easy to try to do as much as you possibly can, and sometimes you get diminishing returns or guys get burnt out. You see it all the time. Or you get banged up, and I definitely gotten banged up a lot in college, but I think with the pro structure this year aside, because we're playing the quarantine tournament, right? It's almost like it's game week every week, and you're just really making sure you're taking care of your body. And then off season is just all about trying to get in the best possible shape. And that's really, as I've kind of gone on with my career, I coached college lacrosse at Harvard while playing for the Cannons. So I was just doing a lot of the same Division I type lacrosse, circuit training workouts, similar to what we did at Rutgers. So it became a little monotonous, and I think I got not complacent, but I was comfortable. And, recently in the past year, I've worked with a couple different trainers, and I'm going into the gym now, this place called Compete Indoor Sports, and they kick my ass, and I'm training with a bunch of kids that are in college now. and we're doing so much more speed and like footwork than I've ever done. And, I learned not the hard way because I was prepped for it, but I learned this past year in indoor, like the game is running, man. So like, I think that's something I've done more and invested more time in as I've gotten older, just my body training, the sports psych side of things. Like we're doing chats with our Faceoff Factory guys every Sunday, and I'm hopping in. So like I'm continuing to learn too. And all that stuff is just painting the full picture of how many different ways you have to work on your game because, dude, all these kids coming up are so good. And to stay out in front of it, you got to be doing more stuff. Yeah, you got to be doing more. But you got to be smart about how you work and use your time, not just hammering your body, but focus on other little things.
That's awesome, man, because I remember you and I had a deep conversation after you got hurt during USA prep, right? Or right before USA prep?
Yeah, before.
And we were, I think like the conversation was basically like the next time USA tryouts come out, you're going to be older. You got to take care of yourself. And I was going through the same thing with my injury. So we were kind of talking about taking care of ourselves together, and it was awesome.
Dude, the ACL stuff's a grind, but once you get like past month 3 and you start making progress, it's really, really encouraging. And I think, that's one of the things that like makes you appreciate the little things, right? Like the good days and the bad days, and kind of like pick your spots. I think that was something that taught me a lot and really forced me to look inward and just appreciate like every single opportunity I get to, even just practice.
Oh yeah, dude. It's like, dude, ACL, man, like, cause it's like, you celebrate the little things, like I can walk, I can jog, I got this degrees of extension, and then that kind of, I think it makes you appreciate the process more when you're done with it. So then you're just like, okay, like we're going to practice today, I get to work on this today, I get to work on that today. Let's say I took 5 shots and yesterday I made 2 of them. Okay, well today I made 3 of them, so celebrate the improvement. So yeah, man, it humbles you, dude. And you could go to a dark place. Like you could come out a very different person. And it seems like you've come out for the better, man. I mean,
definitely. It taught me so much. And just, I'm very cognizant of little things now that, I may have overlooked in the past, like just preparation and, prepping your body, warming up. Like, I go out there and take 100 face-offs with no warm-up. It's like, what am I thinking?
Yeah, dude. Yo, kids these days, I'm sure you've seen it being a coach.
They do that too. And lately I've been making them do forearm, wrist warm-ups, right? Like, get their legs going, hips. Yeah, exactly.
They just go straight into
that's
the
how
live
those chronic
face-offs.
Injuries. And, it's easy for face-offs because you're not running around and banging all the time, like out in the open field or cutting. So guys are like, I don't need to get warmed up, bro. It's not that intensive on my body. Take a couple days of face-offs every week and then tell me how you feel after a year, right? Like it adds up. That's where the chronic stuff comes from. It's because all overuse. You have to prep your body and like get everything warmed up so everything's working synchronously, or you're just overloading certain areas because it's not a symmetrical, motion or stance.
Yeah.
Right? You're putting different strain on different parts of your body.
Yeah. And you're putting, like, you're going down like in the same stance every time. And it's not a balance. Like you said, it's not symmetrical. So like it's easy to develop those imbalances.
Yes. Right. And I think that's where like my knee injury came from. It's just imbalances. And I've always been big on balance. And like, I grew up training that way because my dad's a wrestler. So we did a ton of stretching, right? A ton of core work, a ton of non-weight resistance stuff. So everything's in balance.
How is he doing, by the way? He's the man. I remember after we beat Ohio State, we went to some party in a backyard.
I remember you're talking
some
about
party in the
outside.
backyard. Yeah, you, me, JoJo, and Mr. Nards was a great time.
He loves face-off, and he's doing well. He's trying to do work around the house, so thank you guys for getting me out of it for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no worries, man.
So compared to, like, college, pro lacrosse in general, it's a lot more on your own. So compare that with college where everybody's training together. How much harder is it? Do you think it's harder to be a pro lacrosse player and train compared to like a college lacrosse player? I mean, lacrosse is a much different pro sport than like, the NFL, the MLB, the NHL. They have so many more team sessions. Lacrosse is so much more on their own. Do you think it's like harder to be a pro lacrosse player and train and keep that motivation?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why you don't see a lot of guys have long careers, especially when they're working other jobs, because it's a second job training. You know, I'm recently spending 2 to 3 hours a day doing stuff to get ready for this PLL tournament. So like, I get it. It's really hard for those guys working other jobs, and that's why guys phase out. I think one thing I've done well is I put myself in positions where it's easy to be accountable to training, right? I was coaching Division I lacrosse. Like, those kids are going in the weight room and I'm not gonna. That's like, you gotta do it. Right. So I'd always been inclined to just continue the training. And then recently, since I've not been coaching Division I, I was like, I got to get somewhere where someone else is like an expert is going to really help me out. And my strength coach, Joe Drain, has been awesome with all of it.
I'm going to talk about your PLL game currently, but I guess first let's talk about like, how are you preparing for this season and what's different and what's the same?
You know, I think preparation wise, the difference is like, we're not preparing. Like, it's easier to prepare for like those one big day a week games, but now it's like, it's going to be a battle of attrition. Like, we're playing 4 games in a week-ish, right? Like, that's going to be tough. We have a double header. So I think preparing for like, my training has been really clumped into like 2 hard days, like regen day, 2 hard days, regen day. So it's like I'm constantly pounding my body, giving it a little rest, pounding my body, giving it a little rest. Same with faceoffs, trying to go like super hard 2 or 3 days in a row, and then, you know, take a day or 2 off where I'm not doing any faceoff stuff and giving my hands and wrists and hips and shoulders and back a break. So I think that, coupled with NLL, just, you know, playing more in the field than running, like, I feel like my conditioning I've just focused on more so than ever.
I get that completely. But since everybody being quarantined, like, how has COVID like impacted the team? Like, is there still camaraderie? I'm sure you guys are doing Zoom calls, but how has that played out, making sure that everybody's still on top of their stuff, working out and doing everything they can?
Yeah, so our team's a unique situation because we're like 75% Maryland guys. So they already have that camaraderie. So it's pretty natural. And the guys not from Maryland, like myself and Ty Warner, like, we've phased right in because we play like those guys play, like tough, hard-nosed lacrosse. So everyone's been putting in the work. You know, we're pretty hungry to repeat, considering, like, although we're technically the favorites, like, not a lot of people are giving us respect, man. It's all about the other teams and the flash, right? And people are sleeping on the snakes.
Oh yeah, you don't want to sleep on a snake in the grass.
And that's right, snake in the grass.
Yeah, dude. So I was listening to the Stripe, Greg's podcast, and and the looking at your statistics. Number one, I was very surprised looking at your clamp percentage. I was very surprised it was in the 30s because I think you have outstanding technique. But I think it's super impressive that your clamp percentage was that low and your face-off percentage was in the top 3 of the league. To me, that says that you, as a 27-year-old professional, have a ceiling that is, you know, that is through the roof. Like how have you taken the film from last year and how have you taken the film from last year and made a plan for yourself to build on that success? Because I don't care what the clamp percentage is, man, the face-off percentage is super impressive. And then you look at that, that's just like, wow, like, you could be the best guy in the league.
I think you can look at it from a couple different angles, right? Number one, I think strategically, sometimes I bail out because I know I can play defense. So that probably skews the stats, as well as like a couple bad games where, you know, I was a little bit stubborn in addressing some things rather than just changing it up early on. But I think, you know, seeing my clamp percentage was like 35%, but also the clamps that I lost, my percentage was like 35%. I was like, damn, I'm stealing a ton of them back, right? So it's like, number one, I got to make sure I'm not going early because I have a 35% chance even if I lose the clamp, you know? So if I could kind of couple those things together and bring my clamps up, I've really been focusing a lot of technique work, a lot of first move stuff, a lot of reaction stuff, and been feeling great the past week and a half, like best weeks of practice I've maybe ever had. And that's, I think, definitely credited to training with guys like T. Erlin and Drew Simino, who are both
Oh yeah,
speedsters to the
yeah,
ball.
two of the best.
So, right. And those guys have really helped me transform my game. But I think just watching the film, I've noticed, like, I rotate a little bit too quickly. So I've changed my stance. Sometimes I'm stuffing in too much, so my elbow's getting bent on my rotation rather than locking out. So I've kind of worked on developing a shorter, snappier first move, which has really helped. And then just patience in my tie-ups, not rotating as much, because if guys want to pull the ball out while I'm kind of sitting there, I'm probably going to beat them on the ground ball if I'm in position. But when I wedge myself upfield, that's what I'm losing, that secondary. I'm losing my ability to even make a play on the ball by going upfield and giving them the easy out forward.
Yeah, but then you look at your ability to also create offense. Like you had 12 points last year, 6-6. I didn't look at the other face-off guys' statistics because I don't have to look at that to tell you that is the top amount of points for a face-off guy in the league. Like that is not only like even if you get the possession, like there's no guarantee you're going to score. But then when you put in a top 3 face-off percentage and then 12 additional points, that's dangerous.
That's right. And a lot of it, I was talking to Greg on the podcast. He's like, where do you think a lot of those opportunities come from? I was like, only a couple are true 4-on-3s. Most of them are 6-on-5, 5-on-4s, because we get the other team out of position out of ground ball plays, or guys run off and give us free transition. So I think, just understanding offense, being a coach, understanding transition, us focusing on it a ton at Rutgers, those things all
we did tons of plays with you.
I know that those things all kind of led to my game being catered this way. And I know I can say this to you because you're my boy. When people say the top 3 stuff, it's like, dude, playoffs count. I was number 2 in percentage.
Wow. I didn't even look at that. What?
No, on the website, they just have the regular season stats. But I think it's BS because the playoffs count.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're
– oh, sorry. Go right.
No, you're good. Well, I was just going to say, so your overall goal with the Whip Snakes is obviously to repeat, but do you have any personal goals that you want to eclipse? Do you want to get more points, more ground balls, better face-off percentage? Like what's motivating you? What are your personal goals for the season?
I think I got to lead the league in ground balls again. I got to get my clamp percentage. I just got to get my percentage higher than last year. If I can go above 54 and change, right? If you're in the 55 to 60 range, that's elite for pros. It's easy to say, like, I want to be the top guy in the league, but that's also out of my control, right? Because I'm only playing in 7 of the 20 games possibly, right? Like I could have a good game against every guy, but a guy like Trevor Baptiste can pop off against everybody else, and there's nothing I can do about that, right? So I don't think being number 1 in percentage is my goal, but I think being number 1 in points and ground balls are totally within my control, because that's just playing lacrosse post face-off, which is what I'm all about. And then I think my last one is, maybe spell some of those guys and play a little more defense than I have in the past, and also stay on a little more in transition, especially against those teams with only one guy, to really make them work a little more, because I think my conditioning is at a level that it hasn't been at before.
So do you think you're going to play more 6-on-6, or is it just going to be more transitional stuff?
We're going to have to ask Coach Staggs about that.
Gotcha.
But I would love, me and Rambo were texting the other day about some pass down, pick down plays and some lefty breaks. So I hope so, man.
Wow.
I think I understand picks a lot better than I have in the past, because, indoor is, I don't know if you guys ever watch like indoor practice.
Well, it's all two-man game. That's all it is. It's just people slam.
All 2-man. Right, and you can slam guys at full contact, right? And so playing defense, you see what the offensive guys are trying to do every time, and you get a great view of it. And those, like, box in general, I think the reason those guys are better, obviously the tighter quarters and such, but you think about like how they practice and how many more games they play over the course of their lives. Like, dude, those kids are getting so many reps in a box practice. You're shooting the ball like 100+ times. Right?
100%. Yeah.
Right? You're throwing and catching so much more. It's the ball's on the ground so much more. It's just like more reps of everything, and over time, like Sean's a face-off guy. He knows this better than anybody. Dude, you stack on hundreds of thousands of reps, like you're guaranteed to be better, more confident in tough situations. et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, think about how many times you touch the ball as like a D midi or faceoff guy in a field practice on a field team during the season. It's not that much.
No, dude, yeah. Then one of the coaches at Harvard used to always say this, like, I'd rather our faceoff guys be able to throw amazing passes, both hands, than catch, because they're mostly only throwing.
Absolutely. Oh, wow, that makes sense. I guess I can tell Coach Breck the reason I dropped a couple passes in the game is because of that.
Yeah.
I can be like, hey, Coach, that I was only practicing throwing.
Yeah, but you should, like, all face-off guys, to anyone listening, you have to be able to do those things. You don't want to be in that situation where the coach doesn't trust you to catch the ball. But that was just a valid point off of what you had said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now going back to what you're doing to improve. Now, how do you balance trying to improve your clamp percentage, but also like not changing what you do? Like you said, there were a couple games where you were like, I was a little too stubborn, and I've been there before where it's like you might as well just bail on the clamp because the other guy's not as good of an athlete as you, but you just stay in there because it's like, oh, I want the ball. So how do you balance not changing who you are, because that's always been who you are? And honestly, you said this the other day over text. You're like, you know what? Like if you're like, yo, I was an All-American in college, and you know what? I wasn't the best on the clamp even in college.
I think, like, I definitely trying to improve the areas of deficiency, like rotating too quickly, right? Committing to my first move. Like, we've talked about that, but I think ways that we can kind of continue to push things forward is to look at those good games, right? If you take out 2 or 3 bad games, I'm 60+% last season.
Oh, yeah.
Which is nuts, right? So if I can just get every game close to 50, like, that'd be a huge step, right? And I think that's a realistic goal for everyone. Just win every matchup. And, it's way easier said than done when you're going against guys like Tom Kelly and Trevor. But I think even if you get close to 50, only like -2 or 3, like, that'll help though when you have those good games. And going back to what we were saying, those good games are what you want to try to pick from, right? See the things you were doing right, and then that's how that you can, like, not lose your identity or what makes you successful, but focus on the right things. And whenever I struggle, I go back to good games, or I go back to college film. And although, sometimes I was standing up and my stance knee down was totally different and things have changed, you can look at, like, some of the basics, like, where's my right hand hitting when I meet his stick, right? How high up is my left hand going? Like, a lot of those same themes I've tried to emulate both from college and early in my career in the games recently. I've been successful.
You mentioned you were an assistant coach at Harvard. So now you currently are full-time with a very successful business teaching Faceoffs called Faceoff Factory. What did your time at Harvard, I guess, teach you about the coaching profession?
It taught me a lot. So when I was there, I was the youngest one on staff all 4 years. I don't think there's any years that anyone else working with me was below the age of 30. So, like, I had to grow up pretty quickly. And I think that made me way more fit to lead a large group of kids, right? So, like, I'm speaking in front of 50 Ivy League college kids. Like, I got to be buttoned up with my preparation, what I'm going to say, like my delivery, because they're going to read into everything, my body language. So I really learned how to be a leader and learn how to look at lacrosse, like, more analytically, more structurally, and, like, functionally, and how I can implement that into large groups and how you can make sure everybody's doing something so there's no wasted time. And I think that just, sums it up, is I became much better at being, like, a functional, efficient, like, how do I want to say it? Inspirational leader. And I think my Faceoff Factory kids, like, totally, like, enjoy it. And, I have a ton of other great coaches who work with me, but the kids always say, like, like, a lot of them are like, well, yeah, it's not the same when you're not here, because I have a different coaching experience, right?
But again, back to coaching, I'm sure that, how much better has that made you in all aspects of the game? Because being a Division I coach, you have to be well versed in offense, defense, specialists, goalies. How much better has that made your overall lacrosse IQ?
Crazy, like, you're around high level guys watching film, thinking about different things, hearing great coaches coach. I've been lucky to work with some really good, both, like, mature adult coaches, like, in their mid to late 30s and like younger early 30s coaches. So I've learned a ton, but I think like, my last year there, not only was I helping out with goalies, I was running the man down, defensive assistant, face-offs, wing play, right? So transferring directly into box the next year, like I never would have been that quick to pick up on like a Canadian heavy game. And it's like my team, like they're not, if I had a Fogo, they weren't letting me play, right? I can't be a liability on D. And I think there was only one game that I really got like picked on. They try to pick on me every game because they think American face-off guy rookie. But I think only one game I played bad where, a couple goals are my fault and we're a save or two away from them not being my fault. But I think I would have been able to play indoor if I wasn't, fully immersed in defense. And also like my percentage has always been better because I know how to coach my own wings. And like you see, Greg does a really good job of this too. That's why his teams are always really buttoned up on the wings, is because he's like coaching his own wing guys, whereas other teams may not. So that gives us a huge advantage.
Oh yeah. You need, as a face-off guy, like nobody understands the position in the wings better than the face-off guy. You need to get on the same page as the face-off guy. It can't be the face-off guy getting on the same page as you. Okay, so let's get into a interesting subject. It's 2018. You're coming off your knee injury, and the Boston Cannons have the number 1 overall pick in the college draft. Now, Trevor Baptiste is available. He's the best face-off man in the history of college lacrosse. He's the kind of guy who could help out any team. But you were one of the better guys in the league at that time. And if you have the number 1 overall pick, there's certainly a lot of other holes you need to fill. So what's going through your mind before they make that pick?
I felt like they were going to pick him the whole time for those reasons that you said. He could help any team. He was a generational talent. Not many people at any position are 4-time All-Americans. But it was tough for me because, I was coming off an injury. I didn't know how I was going to play. Obviously, I was fearful of what the return was going to be like, as any athlete would be. And I really just tried my best to get myself prepared. And, sometimes I think especially that last game that I played in Boston, it had crept into my mind a little bit. But prior to that, it really didn't. Because he's still in school and the coaching staff had kind of strung me along. It'd be an open competition, or that they would keep both of us if that were going to be the case. But I don't know. It was tough to block out the distractions and just focus on what was ahead of me.
Right. And it's not like Trevor's making that decision. Trevor's like the nicest guy ever. That's the front office.
That's the point that I really learned what professional sports are in lacrosse. And I even said this to the staff with the Cannons, I've been lucky to get to live here and get to know all you guys super well. And I feel like in professional sports, relationships that pure and genuine, where you can really help one another, are pretty unique, especially in lacrosse, where we're a little bit more of a tight-knit community because of the size. So I had appreciated everything that had gone on there, but I also got, the clear-cut business part of it, which was an eye-opener and definitely a nice little wake-up call as I've grown up and learned what being a veteran in a professional league looks like. So it was a great learning experience all around, and I think that year really motivated me to be better. I think that was my best 10-game stretch as a pro, where I had taken all the face-offs for Atlanta and was 59.6% in 9 or 10 games, which is pretty solid. I think I was the best out of anyone at that time for one team throughout the season. So that had kind of helped me kickstart the second half of my career post-injury.
Right, and that Bleav team you were traded to had a ton of upstate guys on it, so that must have been fun.
Yeah, I really think we were a championship team, and I've talked about it a couple times, especially in preparation of the PLL. The first year I was on Boston, we had a chance we'd lose in overtime in the playoffs to the eventual champion. And then that game, we lose to Denver, the eventual champion, on a shot where Connor Kelly's foot was on the line. So instead of us tying it with the 2, we went down by 1 with about 10 seconds left. And I actually got the face-off forward and had a chance to go down and shoot, and instead passed it, and the ball got tipped. So that one always eats in me. We were absolutely loaded. Our attack was Cuccinello, Rice, Connor Kelly, We had some solid midfielders, both offensively and defensively. Good defense, a lot of good leaders on that team, and that was probably one of the most fun teams I've played on. Obviously, the Whip Snakes and Black Wolves being up there in that top three, not picking a favorite.
So let's get into the mental side of your game. I saw you guys were doing a sports psychology clinic with Dr. Wally Bisdell. Dr. Wally Bisdell is the very famous sports psychologist who did an amazing job with us at Rutgers, does an amazing job with a lot of different teams around the country, a lot of high-level teams. Providence College Hockey being one of them, another one being Union College Hockey. He actually won a national championship with Union College a couple of years ago. What lessons from him do you continue to use throughout your professional career?
Dude, it's so crazy because I've learned, Wally and I worked together at Rutgers for 1 year, and then, I didn't talk to him for a couple of years just because, that wasn't we had a sports psychologist who would come to training camp every year for the Cannons, and, he was our guy when I played in the MLL. But recently, his son's a Faceoff guy. So as he's gotten older, he had reached out to me, and he was like, I'd love for you to train my kid, right? So I work with his son, Alex. He's been doing some of my virtual stuff even lately because we haven't been able to get to Albany and do it in person. But he's done a couple sessions with me, and we've recorded them for my subscription platform, FOF Online, so kids can kind of learn a little more about it because I think it's one of the most undercoached things, right? People are training their craft. They're training their body, but they're not training their mind. So he's forced me to look at, sports and the mental side of things and psychology in such a different light that not only am I better at handling my emotions, I'm better at resetting. I haven't had too many bad games where I get in a hole or can't dig myself out. Even the games against, my two worst games, against Farrell and Baptiste. Farrell was, I think, the second game of the season. I still won the last two faceoffs of the game after getting getting crushed for a while. So I was able to bounce back when my team needed me most, even though things had not gone my way, right? First time they had put a pole out for me in such a long time when I've been facing off. And then against Baptiste that first game, he kicked my ass in the first half. And the second half, we were closer to 50-50. We got a transition goal or two. And again, in the fourth quarter, when time was of the essence, things were tight. I was able to show up and respond despite all of the negative side of it, things. And, early in my career, you saw, when I was at Rutgers, I'm so competitive. I would get so mad when I would lose. You guys could barely talk to me, and you'd always say, "Come on, buddy, let's go." On the sideline,
I remember
Sean
that.
would have his arm around me, little Messi, Sean. He's like, dude, you're the best. You're gonna win the next one. You're gonna win the next one. And it's without guys like that, there's not 3 or 4 guys at your position anymore. You don't have people that directly understand the struggle you're going through. So you have to be your own coach. So he's kind of just allowed me to just take a step back, have a different perspective, and be more analytical and less always taking information rather than frustration and controlling my emotions, which has helped my game a ton.
Yeah, and
stuff always goes wrong in faceoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And lacrosse in general.
Yeah, and there's evidence of that. I was at the championship game, and you started off the game really well, and then Greg started to go on a run. The Woods started to go on a run, and then in overtime, when your team needs you the most, you come out with the overtime faceoff. That's not easy. That's really hard to do.
Right, he's got all the confidence in the world, just dominating the second half, and I'm like, all right, here we go, boys.
Yeah, that's really hard, and also I feel sometimes not reading into things is good too. Is a skill. Like Coach Staggs throwing out the pole in that second game. I was there, and then you win those last two faceoffs. That's important. Not be oh shit. They just threw the pole out on me. Damn, I stink. No, you're you know what? I'm taking a break. I'm getting my head together, and I'm going to face off. So what I wanted to ask you specifically about the clinic with Wally. So where can people sign up for that? And is it limited to just face-off guys, or can other people go?
No, anyone could do it. Honestly, the curriculum is definitely a little more catered to face-off guys because he Wally gets it. He has a son who's going through it. Him and I have talked, so he really fully understands the position. And obviously, like, those are the kids that I work with. But, like, you know, if a family member or anything wanted to hop in, like, always welcome. And all you have to do is go to faceoffactory.com, and on the homepage, it's in yellow. It pops right out. You just scroll down a little bit. It says high performance mindset.
Coach Stagnita recruited you to Rutgers and then wasn't there for your time at Rutgers. How has your guys' reunion been, and what was your first reaction when you knew he was going to be your coach?
I was fired up when I was able to when I knew I was going to get to work with Coach Staggs again. Obviously, I had played for his brother for club in high school. So, like, I'm very familiar with him. He was one of the first guys who had reached out during the recruiting process, sending me a ton of letters. So I had always had a lot of respect for him and admired him, like, based on how my visits went and stuff. And it really just, me going to Rutgers worked out in a weird way where they filled up their class early. I wasn't ready to make a commitment. And then they had someone drop late. And the last tournament before my senior year in the summer, he was there and I saw him watching. So I actually reached out to him and he's like, yeah, we got one spot. And I asked if I wanted to go there, and it was pretty crazy. It happened so quick. But I think getting to work with someone who's such a good leader and so good at, like, with all the leadership qualities, it's taught me a lot as a young coach. So I really look up to him and admire what he's been able to implement into our team and the culture he's been able to create.
Whip Snakes are one of 3 PLL teams to only bring one face-off guy. Everyone's kind of, you know, on social media talking about, like, oh, like, this is not a good idea, like, or it's going to, like, what if he gets hurt or all this crap? Like, how has that, I guess, has that changed your approach in how you take care of yourself, or no?
Definitely, yeah. And, like, even now with quarantine, like, have to be extra careful. God forbid, like, someone in the league fails this test and can't travel. Like, they put their team in a tough spot. And obviously, being the only draw guy, that's something Coach Staggs and I have talked about. But yeah, prep wise, like, mobility, like I said, those regen days, that's something, like, you know, I've done, but I've never spent an hour just doing a regen day, still burning like 400 or 500 calories, right? So I think putting more stock and time into that, and then also being a good teammate. Like, I've been teaching Joe McCallion how to take draws via Zoom. And he goes and he gets reps and he sends some film, just like I'm coaching him like anyone else, which is pretty sweet. And he was a guy who was in the 50s at Penn, really good two-way midi. So I think having a guy like that, if you're only planning on them taking 5 draws a game max, definitely helps us keep the rest of our roster a little bit deeper.
But to end the interview, we're going to do a quick, 5 questions in honor of Craig Kilborn, 5 rapid-fire questions. So first one, I got favorite Rutgers bar.
Old Queens, man, and it's not even close. But times are different. Times have changed. I've been back, and there's a couple good spots. But from when I was there, it was and always has been Queens. They'll always have a spot in my heart.
It's just the most Rutgers place, you know?
That's right.
Second one, upstate New York or downstate New York?
Upstate, for sure. Yeah, I think anything north of, like, people in the city will say, like, anything north of the city's upstate. It's not. Anything north of, like, Westchester, like Hudson Valley, is upstate.
Yeah. Like, my cousins live in Utica, so, like, that's upstate too. So, like,
yes, exactly.
Chris Elaine said Albany last night. He said Albany's, like, upstate.
It kind of is, because if you think about it, it's not. It's basically directly east of Syracuse. Like, when I drive back from Boston, I drive right through. It's literally a straight shot, Boston to Syracuse. So technically, Albany's just as much upstate as, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, because they're all kind of on that throughway line or the Erie Canal line.
Right down I-95, or what is it, I-87?
95 north-south.
Right down 95 north-south.
It's 90. It's 90. The freeway is 90. So funny. Right down College Ave, you used to always say that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I did used to always say that.
When I'd score, because I think it was like Joe Beninati said it on one of the Big Ten broadcasts, then Sean would always say it. He'd be like, right down College Ave, like every time he would shoot.
No, it was Rick Mercurio.
Yeah, you're right. It was Rick Mercurio. I love that guy. He's the man.
He says the funniest things, Joe. For Kieran Mullins once, he was like, "Holy jumping Joe," or something like that.
Yeah, Kieran Mullins. Yeah, I love his accent too.
All right. More annoying accent, New York or Boston?
Boston, for sure. Like, most people aren't bad with it, but then there's, like, some people who you can just tell, like, were never really fully taught how to speak unless they didn't listen to other people. And, like, I'm fully aware, like, you know, sometimes people say, I say things weird or pronounce things weird, and I get it, and so do they. But, like, sometimes people in Boston, they're not even pronouncing the right letters.
I know.
Like, car is spelled with an R, not an H.
Okay. Get your
Any Goodwill Hunting moments where you're like, all right, that's like from the movie?
Honestly, what's it called? Harvard Square. Yeah, coaching there. Like, I'd see spots where, like, you know, and there's other movies that have been filmed there too. I'm like, this is crazy.
Oh my god.
Do you like apples?
Yeah, that's the scene I think about when they're outside the little cafe or whatever.
I got a number. How about them apples? Oh my god. Funniest Rutgers memory.
Funniest Rutgers memory. By far, we're at a tailgate for a football game, and one teammate, Rich Rambo, is standing on top of a car, and Brian Lenskold says he was basically talking smack to him all day, antagonizing him, and he said something really funny, like, that shirt makes you look really fat or something. And he's walking away to go to the bathroom, and Rambo takes a 2-liter bottle of soda and throws it. Like, Lenny's like 50 yards away at this point, like halfway across the parking lot, whips it as hard as he can, and it like looked like we were playing jackpot, like the ball hung in the air forever. Dude, the 2-liter, like 3/4 of the way full, slams Lenny in the back of the head. His sunglasses fall off, and he falls face forward on the ground. He looks up, and it just ran on the car. He's like, I'm gonna kill you.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was probably the best. It was so fun. Like, the chances of someone hitting that are like a 1 in a million.
Tough day for the lobster.
That it was, but you know, Rambo's got those bare hands. He probably had a really good grip on it, just a mild sweat, so it slipped out nice and smooth, and he drilled them.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Then the last one, will the whip snakes repeat? Headline grab.
Yeah. What the whip snakes will repeat, I think. You know, defense wins championships in these games where guys are going to get really tired, right? I think that anytime there's like back-to-backs or doubleheaders, it always plays to more chaos in a defensive style game because the O guys aren't going to be as explosive running by people. So I think for sure us having the strongest defense and, in my opinion, the strongest goalie in Kyle Bernlohr, and then we add an absolute stud in TJ Comizio, who you guys played against in Nova. I think our defense is in a really, really good spot.
Oh, yeah. He's from Del Barton, I want to say.
Del Barton, yeah. I went to Villanova.
And, hey, I really want to thank you for coming on this podcast, man. You're a great friend of mine. Always have been, always will be. And really appreciate all the things you did for us at Rutgers and all the things you did for me personally. So I want to wish you well on PLL Island, and we'll be rooting for you.
Yeah, thanks
Sounds
a lot.
Great, boys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Sean, you're the man. Always here for you. Ryan, great to meet you and learn a little bit more about you. I'm sure I'll see you here in the near future. Hopefully we get college football, and we'll be back for alumni weekend before we know it.
Of
Oh,
course.
yeah, dude. Hey, first round's on me, all right?
All right.
Heard it here. You recorded it.
We're going to get, like, Ryan, we're going to get some, like, age, like, something like 20, 30 years old, super expensive. Sean's got us.
Hey, we're back in New Brunswick, man. Drinks are cheap.
That's so true. You're very true. You are very right. All right, fellas, have a great day.
All right,
Hey, Nardsy,
thanks.
appreciate you, man. Hey, you made it to the end, or I'm just talking to myself and Ryan.
You stay classy, Piscataway.